Tauka is an ugly, useless NPC farmer who spends most of his days dressing vegetables in stockings and drooling over them later. One day after a massive accident, he wakes up as the legendary hero, with all the girls wanting to clap him as soon as they see his new overpowered hard sword. But before this, Tauka is working at his pathetic little farm while dressing his radishes as female thighs because that is the only thing close to a female he has ever touched in his life. Just at that moment, his old high school friend Yuna shows up with her shiny thighs and massive melons, and Tauka can't help himself and keeps staring at her thighs. For this, his disgusting ass gets kicked in the nuts by Yuna and also gets a free scolding from her, being the controlling cow she is. She also tells him that the useless seal that the legendary hero put on the gates to hell has been broken, and now demons are partying all across the kingdom. For a second, Tauka forgets that he is a pathetic weakling and thinks that he has got everything under control by building the Guinness World Record holder for the most pathetic trap of all time. Suddenly, a demon spawns in Tauka's yard, ready to get all hog wild and start clapping Yuna's delicious melons. Tauka almost shits his pants but remembers that Yuna has those juicy thighs he likes and starts trying to protect her in the most useless way possible by making a barbecue, thinking the demon will be attracted to it. The demon doesn't give a shit and is still focused on getting his paws all over poor stupid little Yuna. Luckily, the legendary hero Sion comes up and practically turns the demon into one of the pork chops chilling on Tauka's barbecue. The legendary hero starts rizzing Yuna, and Tauka almost wants to unalive himself from the cringe. And just at that moment, the hero realizes that getting all frisky with Yuna really made him build up an appetite. Yuna offers him her wonderful melons, but the hero is a Sigma and doesn't really care, so he goes straight for Tauka's sausage. On his way to the barbecue, the hero forgets how to be smart and turns into an absolute idiot by walking straight into Tauka's trap and unaliving himself in an instant. The sad beta-looking villagers want to turn Tauka in for unaliving the hero, but he quickly grows a brain and tells them that the king would end up blaming them and that no one would believe such a stupid story. They decide to bury the hero and forget all about this. Meanwhile, Tauka thinks that he is Gucci and goes to sleep, wanting to go back to his loser farmer lifestyle. However, the very next morning, Tauka wakes up and finds that he's got a new, very disgusting rotting body and that he looks exactly like the stupid legendary hero. He can't believe it and immediately goes to Yuna's house to confirm that this is real. Yuna, being the thirsty little call girl she is, immediately strips, allowing Tauka to go all clappy on her because she thinks he is the hero. Tauka is almost about to explode when Yuna realizes that he stinks like a bathroom after a heavy Taco Bell dinner, and starts beating the crap out of him. Pathetic little Tauka tries to explain to her that he is Tauka, but she doesn't believe him until he tells her a secret only he would know. After they establish that it is Tauka inside the disgusting rotting mess that is the hero's body, they find a weird little loli nearby. She turns out to be Anri, a necromancer who promised the legendary hero to give his body to someone she finds worthy in case he gets unalived. She also mentions that her useless ass almost fell into the same trap Sion did, and that it means that Tauka is destined to be the next legendary hero and save the world from all the demons partying around. Tauka tries to refuse, but Anri quickly lets him know what it feels like when your pants get filled with a lot of by showing him that she has full control of his old body, which is chilling in a coffin-shaped pendant, so he accepts, and they even decide to take stupid Yuna with them. In the town, Tauka gets surrounded by all types of girls wanting to clap his rotting bones. At the same time, he gets a discount in every store he goes in, and he is feeling pretty thankful that his stupid trap worked and unalived Sion so he could finally get some bitches. A few hours after getting a room, Anri, Yuna, and Tauka are chilling in an inn, and Anri tells the gang that necromancy is super illegal, and that she could get unalived any second for using it. After thinking about what they are gonna do for cash, Tauka leaves the inn and yet again stumbles into some first-grade call girls with juicy plots who don't believe that he is the real hero and want to check with their 7-Eleven bodyguard. The bodyguard recognizes the hero and says that he owes him a fight. Tauka starts feeling like a little hamster compared to this Zanesha-looking bodyguard and proceeds to try to fight him with his big sacred sword. But since he's super useless, he can't get it hard enough, so the bodyguard wipes the floor with his useless rotting body. Meanwhile, Anri and Yuna are looking for some demons to clap when they get approached by a very sus-looking dude, who ends up being Kyle, another ex-member of the hero's party who managed to close the gates to hell 3 years earlier. They tell him what happened to Sion, and he is super surprised that his friend turned out to be a genius-level idiot. While they're talking to him, the townspeople are already turning on Tauka, exposing him as the pathetic fraud he is and calling for him to be unalived on the spot. Luckily, just as they're about to go hog wild on him, perfect bro dude Kyle shows up and gives him a quick lesson on wielding the sacred sword. This only half proves to everyone that he's Sion because Tauka still has some issues with the sword. Bruh. After a few hours back in the inn, the gang realizes that the only way to prove that Tauka is Sion is to have him join a quest and have his useless ass unalive as many demons as possible. Amri gives Tauka a necromancy crystal, which is the heart of demons, and it ends up showing that Tauka has as much mana as a half-rotten banana, which is why his sword keeps going soft on him. Kyle figures that the world is screwed if this doofus is the one who is supposed to save it, and insists that he should take the disgusting rotting body instead. After being denied this by Anri, stuck-up pretty boy Kyle points his sword at Tauka and tells him that he's gonna unalive him like a little rotting fish. When he sees that savage Anri still won't give him what he wants, he pretends to be joking and backs off. That evening, Tauka the creep goes and sneaks into the girl's room to get his body from Anri's pendant, but can't resist her juicy thighs and ends up putting some stockings on her. Forgetting why he was even there in the first place, dementia-ridden Tauka just straight up waddles out of the window. Just then, Kyle jumps into the room to try to destroy Anri's pendant and wipe Tauka's useless ass off the face of the earth. Luckily, Anri isn't as dumb as she looks, and she previously put a spell on the pendant, which sends Kyle flying halfway across the room. He quickly bolts like the loser he is, and poor Anri is left thinking why on earth she has stockings on. They very quickly realize that the only creep with interest in stockings is Tauka, so Yuna goes and tears him a new one. And the next morning, he looks like a potato that went for 10 rounds in the ring with Prime Mike Tyson. Soon, they start the demon unaliving quest, and Tauka realizes that wannabe Prince Charming Kyle hasn't realized yet that Tauka saw him the previous night. Very quickly, the whole gang ends up reaching the castle where the demons are chilling, and a big bald double spear dude called Belarco goes towards the castle first, only to get impaled by a random demon. Considering this dude was supposed to be super powerful, everyone shit their pants and started running as fast as possible, with the only ones remaining being the useless gang. After Tauka bolts as well, the demon seems to be down bad for some Tauka rotting meat and jumps on him with some wrestling jump demon magic. Kyle is onto his magic wannabe act, and he does some of his own magic, which ends with the demon in pieces. The gang retrieves the crystal demon heart, and Yuna keeps it with the hopes of becoming a tiny bit less dumb and useless by using the spell that is written on the crystal. Tauka wants the crew to think he helped, but they all know he is as pathetic as ever. All of a sudden, a billion demons come out of the forest, all ready to get a piece of Tauka's body. He pisses himself and decides to try his luck inside the demon castle instead. After entering the castle, they are greeted by a bunch of demons who are just chilling and waiting for some dinner guests. Anri sees some random skeletons on the floor and decides to see what they're all about by bringing them back to life with some magic, and even casts another spell to make them super strong. A random demon is down bad for some Yuna melons and spews some random purple slime, which makes all of her clothes melt off. Tauka can't help but relate with him, but luckily gets a little post-nut clarity and realizes that he's gotta protect Yuna. He proceeds to turn his sacred sword into a whip and wraps it around the demon while also chit-chatting with him about Yuna's juicy thighs, to which she responds by smashing them both into a wall using her new spell. Kyle comes and knocks Yuna out acting as a white knight, but it turns out he actually just wants to unalive poor Tauka and get his body for himself now that there is no one there to protect Tauka's sorry existence. Tauka starts yapping about how he thinks that he is worthy, and Kyle promptly gets kicked in the head by a very skimpy looking Yuna. All of a sudden, the kinky demon is back, now under Anri's control, and he seems to swing both ways because he spews the purple ooze on Kyle as well, making him have to cover his sausage to save his life. He starts chasing the gang with his sausage waddling around and ends up getting tricked by the genius mastermind Tauka, who built a fake bridge from his sacred sword, which Kyle straight up falls off after Tauka experiences some more performance issues. In the next few days, while on their way to see the king and ask for some fat cash from him, Tauka's rotting body became so stinky and disgusting looking that he didn't even have skin anymore and was just a straight up spooky scary skeleton. Using his newfound skeleton powers, he takes his clothes off and tries to see Yuna's juicy thighs, which leads to him being promptly buried into the ground. Poor 75 IQ Tauka is trying to think of ways to regenerate, but Anri tells him that he would simply degenerate if he were to transfer souls in this sad state. Anri thinks she is worthless and disgusting because she also has a demon heart inside her, being a necromancer and all. But Tauka, being the weird kinky dude he is, manages to convince her that she will grow up to have juicy luscious thighs one day, and Anri casually starts thirsting for him. Knowing that the king would probably shrivel up and unalive himself seeing the hero as a skeleton, the wannabe painter gang decides to paint a mask that is supposed to look like the hero onto the sacred sword, which Tauka will then put on his face. Tauka finally grows a pair and asks the king to give them some gold to help them out, but the king starts laughing because the original hero was a good guy and never asked for any reward. The king asks if he's back to marry his useless daughter Marguerite, to which Tauka responds by shitting himself and having to say yes after the king threatens to fight his sorry melting self. Tauka, despite his intelligence being the same level as a refrigerator, realizes that Marguerite is the princess and starts getting all frisky, ready to clap those princess thighs. Upon opening the door and seeing Tauka's disgusted melted face, the princess immediately shuts the door, which leaves Tauka to lie his way out of the situation. He says that he was cursed to look like a skeleton, and the princess starts feeling sorry for his bones and lets him in. Afraid that he will get beaten to a pulp, Tauka agrees to marry Marguerite and go on a date with her to the masquerade that is happening in a few days. Meanwhile, Yuna and Anri are walking around town, being their normal useless selves, when they meet a random nerdy Zoro-looking dude named Leland who runs an orphanage. He brings them into his orphanage and recognizes that Anri is a necromancer. Yuna and Anri make up a quick bullshit story about wanting to raise their mono levels, and Leland actually brings out some first grade drops called Soma drops, which boost your mana levels temporarily. They cost 100 million, which is the kind of money neither of their broke asses will ever see in their entire lifetime. Fortunately, Leland seems to be incredibly weird and into lowly looking girls, so he asks Anri to strip. Yuna, being the attention-seeking call girl she is, instantly flashes her massive cannons at him. He explains that he isn't Mr. Beast's childhood friend after all, and that he is actually only interested in seeing her demon heart. A few hours after this, Yuna and Anri decide to join the demon hunt and meet Cerwela, one of the 4 knights. After Anri enters Minecraft creative mode and crafts Yuna a super skimpy outfit out of demon leather, they get kidnapped by 2 pathetic little adventurer dudes called Colin and Negan working for some skeleton guy. Back in Marguerite's room, she makes disgusting ugly looking Tauka great again by painting him a brand new face. Tauka sees a shit ton of food at Marguerite's table and decides to try and help her with eating it. However, Marguerite turns out to be not only the princess, but the queen of all pigs because she gulps down around 12,000 calories worth of food in an instant, yet still collapses of hunger. Tauka almost dies of shock, and the princess's guard Isaac comes in and starts beating on his sorry ass, saying that he had already told him 3 years ago that the princess has mess, which is a syndrome where a person has to eat like a massive pig because their mana doesn't want to stick to them. Fortunately, only a few minutes later, the servants bring in another 17,000 calories worth of food for the princess to slurp up like a vacuum cleaner with melons. She also turns into a big chungus, which doesn't stop the kinky Tauka from admiring her thighs. After eating, Marguerite has to go to a doctor, which leads Tauka to get the hell out of there and look for Anri and Yuna. He learns that they went to visit the orphanage and goes there only to find that the orphanage owner Leland and the doctor looking out for Marguerite's gluttonous self are the same dude. Leland tells Tauka that poor Anri and Yuna are still in the demon hunt and that they should be back soon. Leland then goes into the basement of his orphanage, revealing himself to be the loser skeleton who had kidnapped Anri and Yuna. Accompanied by a demon with a head the color of a baboon's cheeks, Leland confesses he is down bad for some skeleton bones and that he wants to turn everyone into skeletons. He also plots to shift the blame onto poor Anri and her necromancy if he gets caught. A few hours later, after the masquerade has finished, Marguerite and Tauka are standing and looking at fireworks, and small-brained idiot Tauka says that he has never seen fireworks before. This leads Marguerite to finally realize that Tauka is a fake because her fat ass and the real hero already watched the fireworks 3 years ago. Cerwela and Isaac spawn there and start interrogating the life out of Tauka, and given that he is a massive loser wimp, he spills the beans immediately. The princess can't believe what she just heard, so her choji-looking self runs away into town to find something to eat because she is really stressed. In town, she stumbles into the nerdy Dr. Super Creep and gets herself kidnapped. While all this is happening, Tauka is still getting his ass handed to him by Cerwela and Isaac when a knight comes up to them and says that demons are making a rave in the town again. Despite being a pair of bones, Tauka still decides to go and try to save the princess. He very quickly catches up with Leland and tries to act all tough but gets his head chopped off by a random skeleton. At the same time, Cerwela is busting some demon nuts all around the town while also trying to find the princess. After a few clapped demons, she stumbles onto a dog showing off his football skills with Tauka's head. They manage to reattach his head back onto his body and go towards the dungeons to try to find the princess. Isaac reveals his tragic backstory and how he was the one who made the princess into a massive pig slob by training her to become the best bride in the universe. While all this is happening, Yuna is still in the dungeons in her skimpy outfit. Colin tries acting all kinky with her, but Yuna does her spell and turns this dude into a Mr. Potato Head lookalike. All of a sudden, Yuna busts through the wall and joins Cerwela, Tauka, and Isaac. They go to rescue poor Anri, who has made a massive puddle around her from all the snot running down her nose. Meanwhile, Skeleton Leland is giving the princess boring villain dialogue, explaining that he has a necro crystal on his head, which allows his biggest wet dream to come true, and he can see the whole world as X-ray skeletons. He wants to turn everyone into skeletons because he knows discrimination is a big no-no, and everyone is really just a skeleton underneath. He then proceeds to reveal the princess' massive melons to everyone but is immediately stopped by the whole gang. Tauka tries punching him, but given that he is as strong as a medium-sized hamster, he breaks his own arm. However, wannabe Hulk Yuna comes along and merges Leland with the wall. After Tauka gets his hands on Leland's mask, he realizes that his shitty mana allows him to see everyone very clothless. Leland sees that he is about to become pulverized by Yuna, so he starts running away. Unfortunately, Leland reveals that he has another necro crystal, and starts raising some skeletons who start acting sus and take Yuna's clothes off. The gang now has to start running because Tauka and his useless mana levels can't protect anyone. When they finally exit the dungeon, they manage to hide thanks to Tauka's big brain tactics of fooling the skeleton weirdo by using some grapes as a fake trail of blood. He gives the gang some Tauka lore and says that he got stuck alone in the war 3 years ago after his parents died, and the gang concludes that this is where he got his crafty skills. Isaac then says that a mess patient's body fluids can give someone a temporary mana boost, and Kinky Tauka is first in line to get some princess juice on his face, no matter the source. Unfortunately for her, she hasn't cried in a billion years, and she really isn't that sweaty either, so urine is the only way to go. Just as Marguerite's urine is about to land on Tauka's disgusting skeleton face, he jumps off of the ground, realizing that Leland isn't actually a real necromancer. While this very kinky situation is happening, Leland's dumbass is still following the fake grape blood trail. But even he finally grows a brain and realizes that he is being tricked. The gang figures out that he will send his army of simp skeletons to get them and that he will remain defenseless and decide to strike directly at him. However, Tauka is still weaker than a chipmunk, so Leland easily stops his attack. Instead, he reveals his crystal and Yuna turns into Hawkeye and destroys his crystal with her arrow, with all of the skeleton dudes dropping unalived on the spot. Just at that moment, the red-headed demon that was chilling in the basement comes back, holding Cerwela's broken body. He immediately has eyes for the big melon Marguerite and goes all laser beam on her ass. But luckily Tauka throws himself at her and manages to save her, losing half of his skull head in the process. Yuna goes up to fight the demon with her necro crystals, but she can't really do much damage to him because her skimpiness is only so powerful. She begs Anri to return Tauka to his body, but she explains that his spirit is so weak that he would degenerate immediately. The demon starts getting interested in some lowly necro cheeks, so he grabs Anri and squeezes the life out of her until she passes out. He gets ready to go after Marguerite, but the Giga Chad Isaac throws himself in front of her, and Yuna keeps kicking the demon's ass. The poor useless princess is still trying to pee on Tauka, but she can't do it because she's pee shy. And half unalive Tauka gives her a heartwarming pep talk which she finds so sad that she ends up crying 10 years worth of pent up tears, and Tauka's wimpy mana skyrockets and he is back to looking hot and crispy. The demon can't believe his eyes and starts mocking Tauka, even blasting him with his laser beam bullshit. But Tauka just deflects it with his sacred sword shield like it's nothing. Then, being the creep he is, Tauka turns the sacred sword into a massive thigh and plays whack-a-mole with the worthless demon. While this is happening, two shadowy dudes named Diego and Friedrich are chilling in a tower, and they turn out to be the ones controlling the demon. A few hours later, back at the castle, Isaac becomes the director of the orphanage, given that the green-haired creep Leland is now a prisoner in the dungeons. Marguerite also becomes a little bit less useless and can now stop being a massive pig all of the time because her mess was cured by her turning into Take Michi and crying like a baby. She then gives the gang her remaining Soma drops, which poor worthless Tauka can use to boost his sad vegetable level mana. The king stops being a stingy bastard and gives the gang his enchanted carriage, and they start the journey. Everyone thinks that Princess Marguerite had to get left behind because she is still super useless, but she actually did a double switcheroo and snuck into the carriage while leaving her double in the castle. Luckily, someone decided to check the trunk of the carriage a few days after the journey to discover the poor almost starved to death Marguerite. Several days into the journey, the gang realizes that Tauka's wimpy mana level is still super useless and that he is still entirely dependent on Soma drops to survive. After Anri goes all caveman mode and decides to make a random bird she found into dinner, they find that the bird is actually carrying a message from Serwela. The message says that after their battle with the baboon-ass looking demon, an astral form was seen going back into a tower, and that they should go check it out. Tauka hears this and orders them to send her a letter back saying L+ ratio because he doesn't want to go anywhere off course. A few hours later, the girls decide that Tauka is super disgusting and doesn't have any table manners, so they bring him to a bussin' restaurant to teach him how to be a proper Sigma. After Anri and Marguerite fight over him and Tauka almost busts a nut, the girls go to a hot spring and talk more in depth about what they think about Tauka. When Yuna goes to change, she finds Tauka's creepy face looking at her thighs and rains fire on him, telling him that she blames his worthless existence for not being there for her when it mattered the most, and runs into the town in a very skimpy outfit. In the town, she realizes that she is surrounded by a bunch of very weird, kinky-looking dudes who end up being zombies, with one of them even biting her. Tauka catches up to her just as she faints from the bite, which Tauka, being the most unintelligent creep on the planet, understands as a moment to go all the way with her. The zombies continue chasing them, but all of a sudden the dude with the double spears, Belarco, turns up and tells Tauka that he will only help them with the zombies if he admits that he is a disgusting, ugly fraud. Tauka is pretty helpless, so he agrees, and Belarco dispatches the zombies like a bunch of pests. Meanwhile, Anri and Marguerite are still at the spa, and now even the spa is getting overrun with a bunch of kinky zombies, and they have to fight their way out. Just then Tauka brings Yuna back to them, and they all go to the mayor's mansion to see what's happening in the town. The mayor and a bunch of people are being massive wimps and hiding in the mansion, and the mayor keeps yapping on about the mansion being the safest place in the world and that the walls are impossible to get over. Tauka and the gang get over the walls with no problem and start looking for survivors. In the mansion yard, they find the two useless douches Colin and Negan who worked for Leland, and Colin starts disrespecting poor dumb Yuna, who is fully unconscious, which leads to Tauka making him one with a nearby wall. Yuna springs up like a zombie and tries to eat Tauka up, and even he, being the creep he is pretty turned off by this, so Anri possesses her and calms her down. Everyone at the mayor's mansion is pretty stupid, so they manage to lie to them that Yuna's got a cold. A few minutes later, the gang is contemplating what they should do with Yuna. Anri has possessed her body, which is enough to put the zombie spell at bay, but she can't maintain the spell while she is sleeping, so she comes up with an idea, and Tauka volunteers to be the one to have his soul transferred into Yuna's body. Since his mana level is still record-breakingly low, it will require him to keep taking Soma drops to stay in control of Yuna's body. After going into her body, Tauka immediately finds a mirror to look at her juicy thighs, which was what he wanted all along. After Marguerite stops him, Tauka, being a big brain creep, comes up with another plan to go shower instead, which ends with the girls blindfolding him and washing his body for him. Just as Tauka finally thinks he is free to look at those luscious thighs he dreams about, they all decide to sleep in the same room, and Marguerite ends up tying him up. Just then, they hear a noise which proves to be zombies entering the mansion. Henry, Tauka, and Marguerite save the useless mayor from some demons and zombies, and he takes them and Colin and Negan, as well as Belarco, to his secret cannon room. The mayor starts yapping again, this time about the safety of his room and how his cannons are super powerful, and ends up having a premature cannonation because he fires his cannon out into the town, letting every single demon in the area of 75 miles know where they're hiding. He starts crying and begging like a baby, saying that he was the one who let all of this happen by not paying attention to what was going down in the town. Tauka uses the X-ray crystal with the mana crystal and accidentally installs the Minecraft X-ray mod, becoming able to see all of the high-ranking demons in the town.
Hackerman.
Leland's goons Colin and Negan decide to apologize and join forces with the rest of the crew, promising to stop being wimpy wannabe villains. Immediately, the floor breaks and a demon with massive plots appears with her goons. They shoot the hero's empty body, but he just ends up regenerating like Prime Wolverine. Negan attacks one of the goon demons first and promptly gets blasted into the wall. Marguerite proves she is not as dumb as she looks and figures out that the demon can blow up anything he touches. But it is too late because he is already hungry for some princess cheeks. Luckily, Marguerite uses an undressing technique to save herself, leaving her melons out for everyone to see. The gang starts running outside with Colin using his lightning clone to blow up the demon, and Belarco comes up to finish him off, only for it to turn out that the demon is pretty Gucci after all. He ends up smacking poor old Belarco off the wall along with his useless double spears. Out of nowhere, Tauka manages to split the useless goon demon in half, with everyone being flabbergasted about how he can still use the sacred sword even if he isn't in the hero's body. Marguerite quickly realizes that this is because he must also be chosen by the sword despite being ugly and useless, and begs him not to abandon her like the last hero did and stay with her forever. He thinks about all the thighs he would be missing out on and decides to keep his reply to himself until the battle is over. Henry and Marguerite go all team tag combo mode on the other goon demon, and he gets destroyed by Marguerite's arrow. Meanwhile, Negan and Colin are still inside the tower trying to fight the other goons, with the main high-ranking demon suddenly disappearing into the floor. Suddenly, a zombie jumps out of the hole and bites Colin like he was a cheeseburger, and the gang realizes that the zombies are attracted by loud noises and that the spellcaster must be unalived if they want Colin and Una to not turn into brainless rotting monsters. Colin can't wait any longer, so he chases after the high-ranked demon only to get immediately pierced by Diego, one of the necromancers who were chilling in the tower after the Leland situation. Diego turns out to be the one who was controlling the Baboon Cheeks demon that night, and he is now controlling the high-ranking demon again. He very quickly figures out that the original hero Sion is dead and gets introduced to the useless master Tauka. He sees that Tauka only has a mana level of 4, to which Henry digs his poor ass into an even deeper hole by saying that he actually has a mana level of 1. Diego starts laughing uncontrollably, considering even fish and insects are more powerful than the worthless loser Tauka. He can't really understand why Henry is not on his side, being a necromancer like him, but Henry explains that she made a promise to the original hero, and that Tauka, despite the fact that he unalived the hero in the stupidest way possible, is not on his side either, considering that necromancers were absolutely hated by both demons and humans. Diego says they ended up making an alliance with the demons instead, wanting revenge on the puny humans. Henry tries making him remember the hard times they experienced in hell, but he doesn't want to hear any of it and sends all of the kinky zombies towards them. Diego protects the call girl-looking demon from Tauka's attack, but immediately scolds her, telling her to stay out of the whole thing because she's useless. Tauka manages to get the zombies in a massive box made of his shape-shifting sacred sword. To counter Diego with his massive blood axe, Tauka reverts to his talk no jutsu, and tells him how he has the powers of luscious thighs, and that is what enables him to wield the sacred sword. Considering he isn't the legendary hero, Diego kinda shits his pants at first but decides that Tauka probably isn't a threat since he can barely hold up the wall with his worryingly low level mana. Just at that moment, the mayor, who was previously trying to escape on his horse, smashes into Diego with the enchanted carriage. Tauka is all proud, explaining how he managed to convince him to do this in return for seeing Cloveless Marguerite in stockings. The gang is wondering how the mayor knew who the enemy was, but it turns out that 200 IQ Tauka wrote it out with massive letters on the wall, containing all of the zombies, which are now all under Anri's control. They're thinking that the battle is over, but annoying-ass Diego comes out of the rubble unharmed. Luckily, at that exact moment, Millie Yunes, another wannabe legendary hero and also Yuna's younger sister, shows up with her party along with her dad Fury. Yuna's dad turns out to be an even bigger creep than Tauka, only focusing on melons instead of thighs. The party starts team tagging Diego with Yuna's dad, even losing focus and admiring the enemy demon's cannons instead. But even after this massive attack, Diego is fully unharmed. He tells them that the spell cast on the townspeople will turn everyone into demons in 24 hours, and that at that point, even unaliving the spellcaster won't do jack. He then gets all loser mode and flies away on a flying demon. The healer in Millie's party goes on to heal poor pathetic Colin, but this will not do anything unless they can unalive the spellcaster in time. Colin starts thirsting over Tauka, saying that he is the craziest fighter he has ever seen, and gives him all of his crystals and spells, staying behind with Negan to wait for the gang to return. The gang parts ways with the kinky mayor, who goes on his way to report everything to the capital and to see if they can somehow get any help in time. And the gang makes their way towards Elvania, Yuna's and Tauka's hometown, that was absolutely turned to ashes by demons 3 years ago. On the carriage, everyone introduces themselves, and the gang realizes that Fury was one of the 4 knights until he thirsted over Cerwela's bazungas so much that he got kicked out of the castle. The mage girl and healer girls introduce themselves too, with the healer being Shannon and the mage being super sleepy to introduce herself properly, handing the gang over a piece of paper that says her name is Dorothy. It turns out that Dorothy was once a part of Sion's party, and Tauka starts getting all worried about what they will do once they find out that Sion is actually super dead. Fury even tries talking to poor old Sion's body, but Tauka tells him that Sion took a vow of silence because he felt useless and will stay silent until he closes the gates of hell again. Millie notices that something seems off with her sister, and Tauka quickly lies his ass off by saying that he has started to rub off on her, to which she gets angry, thinking that she wants to steal him from her, even though they had already agreed to get married long ago. Tauka gets some very dangerous looking looks from a very jealous Marguerite, and he explains that he promised to marry Millie when they were super young if she beat him 100 times in battle, and she managed to clap his sorry self every single time. Fury then says that he hates Tauka's thigh-loving creepy little ass, and orders Tauka, who he thinks is Yuna, to go home after all of this like the true douche father he is. Just then, they run into a massive rock in the road, as well as a crazy amount of demons and a woman looking at them from a cliff. Fury and Dorothy go out onto the roof of the carriage, being all cocky, ready to deal with the demons. But a massive spider demon jumps onto the carriage. Shannon manages to drift them out of this situation and takes them down a super narrow road, only for them to fall into Tauka's favorite, a pitfall trap. Everybody is shitting themselves about the landing, but the Giga Chad Tauka makes his sacred sword into a nice soft pillow, and everybody survives. Anri blames poor old Tauka for the pitfall, but he reassures her that he wasn't the one to build this one. Very quickly, Millie gets pretty suspicious about how Yuna can use the sacred sword, and Tauka quickly bullshits his way out by saying that this is also one of the legendary hero's powers, to be able to give the power to use the sacred sword to anyone around him. Once they are finally out of the broken carriage, they see that they are surrounded by a very thick-looking fog. Millie whips out her wannabe sacred sword and blows the entire fog straight away. Immediately after impressing everyone, her IQ drops to the level of a log, and she runs straight into a trap. With the fog also promptly coming back, she swiftly gets attacked by a very kinky demon since he deletes half of her clothes. They all go back to back and realize that this must be some magic fog that can even hide the presence of the caster as well as the demons that are chilling in it, preying on some melons. All the while this is happening, the massive melon purple hair spellcaster is looking at them from the edge of the cliff, rubbing her hands together thinking how everything is going her way. Back on the ground, demons begin appearing and very quickly unaliving every single member of the group, With only Tauka and Yuna's body left alive, forced to hide under a rock like a wimp he is, the purple-haired woman can't contain herself and will almost bust a girly nut, so she comes down with her weapons of mass destruction to deliver the final blow to Tauka. Tauka does the wimpiest thing in all existence and gives up the sacred sword to save his worthless, disgusting existence. All of a sudden, a random demon stabs the fog machine demon and the walking plot woman is losing her shit. It turns out all of the gang is alive, and this was all a trick that Tauka came up with while watching the woman with his mana crystal. He explains that they countered the demons easily with Anri possessing them to look dead, while they waited for the impatient woman to come so they get to take her down. In the middle of acting all cocky upon seeing the woman up close, the simp Tauka gets some Domina flashbacks, and he immediately drops all his clothes and kneels in front of her calling her master. He reveals to the gang that she is Ethel, the one who taught him all about traps 3 years ago when he was fighting for his life. He fell into one of her traps and begged her like a true simp to train him, after which she somehow agreed to train him on their way to Albania. Millie immediately realizes that it is Tauka in Yuna's body and almost starts crying like a bitch, thinking her sister is dead, but Tauka reassures her that she is still alive. Tauka also reveals to her that he unalived Sion with one of his traps, and Ethel explains that she joined the demons after witnessing what happened at the gates of hell 3 months ago, and that the experience changed her whole way of thinking. Tauka thinks that this is all bullshit, but Ethel urges them to see for themselves and lets them go walking away with the sacred sword. Tauka tells her that her naughty student built a pin into the handle of the sword which will take her entire arm off if she doesn't give it over to them. She accepts defeat and joins them, which Tauka sees as a perfect opportunity to punish her and makes her get fully not safe for work only in stockings like the kinky weirdo he is. Meanwhile, Diego and snotty-nosed Friedrich are looking at this situation using magic video chat and can't believe that she switched sides. At the same time, the mayor has finally reached his boat, and he finds Belarco with his twin spears waiting for him like a good little girl. They go on the boat and try to reach the capital as soon as possible. Back with the gang, the enchanted carriage is all sorts of so they go to a repair shop to fix it. On the way there, Fury informs Ethel that she has been on his touchy list for a long time, and Ethel wants to end both him and herself on the spot. They finally reach the repair shop, and the dude straight up tells them that he is retired. Ethel tries to leave but ends up staying and immediately goes full on crime mode like the crazy bitch that she is and breaks into the shop. The Gramps in there looks about as dangerous as a 4-day-old burrito and starts touching Yuna's melons immediately. It turns out that this is actually Sion's Gramps, who is pretty much almost blind. After pouring tea onto everyone's head instead of into the cups, his blind ass tells them that the repairs are a bit harder and will take a few days. But Marguerite decides to go full on nerd mode and study books so she can help get it done faster. Tauka remembers that Millie never gave them the lore dump on why she's also calling herself the legendary hero, and she says that her sacred sword is actually one of 4 man-made swords. Considering that the main demon dudes, called the Infernal Generals, are immune to everything but the sacred swords, Ethel tells her that she will prove to be a real hero if she manages to slay the Infernal Generals with her sword. After this, Ethel gives them some tea on the enemy and says that the 4 necromancer dudes who are their biggest enemies actually have the infernal bodies in their possession. On top of that, they will also need to fight around 1 billion demons, and all this in less than 24 hours if they want to save poor Yuna and the townspeople. Tauka, even though a mass rain, and tries to go somewhere he has never been and finds a massive white wall, which he finds leads him further into the future after he jumps through it like the idiot he is. After jumping into the future a few more times and hearing from Yuna that she regrets not seeing his dumb butt off when he was leaving 3 years ago, he gets to the day his mother gets unalived. He goes up to her and she manages to give him a letter pathetic shy Yuna wrote him before they had left. They fast forward through a few more boring Tauka days and get to one where he is wounded, on which he says nothing important happened. Yuna realizes that she was a huge bitch to him and starts apologizing and crying like a waterfall, saying that she didn't know all the bad crap he had been through and that she took him for granted. She says that her sorry ass was listening in on all of the conversations back in the real world, and that she heard how he came back to save her 3 years ago, and that she feels super sorry that she always thirsted for the hero when such a Sigma was by her the whole time. Tauka keeps his Sigma cool and says that it indeed was the hero who saved her, and adds that this day was actually when he read her letter, which pissed him off so much he simply had to get home. Tauka tries flattering stupid Yuna in hopes she will let him touch those thighs again by saying to her that this whole time it was actually her saving him all this time. Just at this moment, a high-ranking ugly-ass demon appears and says to Tauka that he is bored as hell with his constant lore dumping, so he has come out to reveal that this is all his doing, and that he is gonna unalive him, because he doesn't seem to be able to see Yuna. Tauka keeps fast-forwarding to his strongest moment so he can defeat the annoying, disgusting demon, and ends up trying to ask Sion and Kyle for help along the way, both of who either tell him to piss off or just get unalived, with the demon now altering the memories. Tauka finally gets to his strongest moment in Sion's body, holding the sacred sword, and the demon tells him that he is powerless as crap in the real world, but that it doesn't matter as his whole gang is also under attack by other useless demons. Tauka tries to fight him but finds that the demon can predict all of his stupid attacks. Tauka and Yuna quickly figure out that if she gets on his back and controls his useless ass, the demon won't be able to predict the attacks because they aren't coming from Tauka's mind, and he is blind as crap so he can't see Yuna. Together, they manage to make a massive thigh like the creepy weirdo Tauka did in the memory, and squash the demon like a bug. Meanwhile, in the capital, as Cerwela is getting pissed at Tauka's L+ ratio response, a magical dude reveals that he sent a squad of useless magical warriors to try to take out the emo wannabes Diego and Snotty Nose Dude. After Tauka and Yuna finally leave the memory world, the loser Tauka finally stops his loserness and decides that he will for sure save Yuna. He can now also see her in the real world in her unclothed ghost melon form, and the whole gang comes to them saying that they wiped the floor with the weakling demons and that the carriage was almost fixed and ready for the journey to continue. Before that though, Tauka has still got a mana level of a half-eaten hamburger, so he must get out of Yuna's body for a while. The lowly wannabe Anri also goes full Sherlock mode and deduces that the reason Tauka can still see Ghost Yuna is because there has been a link formed between their souls because of all the time Tauka spent inside her body. They can't really figure out what to do with Yuna's body, so they just throw her zombie ass into the trunk of the carriage, all chained up. Meanwhile, the magic squad gets into Diego and Friedrich's lair, and they start fighting them, immediately managing to yank Diego's ugly, disgusting head off of his puny body. Diego, however, goes full on hidden mode and stitches it back together thanks to some blood juju, as well as the Infernal General's power. Because he holds one in one of those small coffin things Tauka's original body is also chilling in. He quickly summons the Infernal General and ends up wiping the floor with the magic squad, leaving the main magic dude flabbergasted and scarred for life as he watches using his magic video chat. While all this is happening, the mayor and Belarco arrive, and the mayor is having some major PTSD and grief about the way he was a giant bitch towards the people in his town, yet they still respected him. The king understands that the situation is pretty messed up, so he asks even the unclothed wannabe legend Kyle for help, and he accepts, only thinking about getting his petty revenge against Tauka. Back at the repair shop, Fury and Tauka finally find a mutual language, with Fury insisting that Tauka agrees with him that Melon's rule, which being the creeper he is absolutely no problem for Tauka. Blind Gramps is a pretty good tech dude because he built a mega advanced transmission system for everyone to stay in contact. He may be blind, but he can see Yuna and those melons of hers very clearly, so he builds her a skimpy outfit out of demon leather which transmits mana so she can actually wear it. They are starting to get on the merry way and are saying goodbye to the senile Gramps, who keep referring to Tauka as Sion even though they told him what happened to poor old gullible Sion about a bazillion times. As they are leaving, Gramps says that he knows what he sees and asks the already very dead Sion to protect them, showing that there is a hidden soul inside the sacred sword. Ethel wants to leave again, but the King of Sigma's Tauka manages to guilt trip her into staying yet again. Meanwhile, Kyle, Belarco, Isaac, and Cerwela are discussing the mission on their way to help, with Kyle's arrogant ass still being super fixated on unaliving poor Tauka, and he is even insulting Belarco every step of the way there. A few hours later, as the enchanted carriage reaches the ruins where the melon demon is hiding, Millie the young dumbbat gets all motivated and tells Tauka that she wants a free Elvania where her Yuna and Tauka can just chill just like in the old days. Tauka then tells Ethel and her massive melons that they'll stick to the plan. He jumps out of the cart alongside her and greets the shit ton of skeletons and demons that are chilling nearby the ruins, And out of nowhere, the fickle old hag Ethel stabs and unalives Tauka on the spot. The hidden wannabe Diego and the snotty-nosed dude almost nut in their pants seeing that Ethel hadn't betrayed them after all. Meanwhile, this proves to not be the case as Tauka is back in his useless, disgusting old Tauka body and is infiltrating the castle with Ghost Skimpy Yuna and a surprise appearance from the lowly queen herself, Anri, who left a super ugly looking doll as a double to take her place. They start running around, and Tauka immediately realizes that his own body is in absolutely horrible shape and that he would get tired from even walking 3 meters. After locating the ruins of the tower they need to get to, Tauka immediately collapses from all his uselessness and contemplates whether the actual reason is because he is an idiot and took way too many Soma shots or because of too many necro-possession jutsus. Whatever the case, he decides to just ignore it and move forward as a true Sigma would do. After coming across 2 random NPC loser low-rank demons, Anri possesses their bodies, and they infiltrate the castle. They quickly find a few poor humans trying to defend themselves against a shit ton of demons. Tauka the idiot gets a great idea and puts on a red headband and pretends to be a high-ranking demon, telling all of the other demons that what really matters in life are unclothed girls in stockings and that they should make the adventurers strip instead of unaliving or eating them. 2 random weak demons start simping for Tauka and his stupid ideals and bring him straight to their queen Adele, the same demon that cast the spell, in order to save her. Tauka the Naruto wannabe uses the talk no jutsu again and talks the demon queen into touching foreheads, and as he taps her forehead while using a crystal, he immediately puts her weak ass to sleep. Unfortunately, the snotty dude Friedrich isn't gonna allow this to happen and he opens up a portal, slicing Tauka's useless demon in half along with the sacred sword, with Anri barely being able to bring him back to his disgusting ugly body. He comes up to Anri and her lowly butt ends up being her younger sister. The demons outside get alerted to the fact that Tauka is inside, so knowing what kind of massive kink masters they are, Marguerite, being the skimpy little princess she is, takes off her clothes, along with Millie, the wannabe hero whom the demons have already blown the clothes off of. They start running around with the demons chasing them as a massive diversion so Tauka can stay as safe as possible. Meanwhile, Tauka is trying to convince Friedrich that he is better than the emo hidden loving Diego, and that he should actually still care about the innocent people despite all the horrible things that happened to their poor selves 3 years ago. The snotty boy says that he does care about the innocent but cares more about seeing his weird ass goal of the entire ruling system collapsing come true. He starts telling naive little Anri that she too is cold-blooded, and she almost believes the whole because she remembers that she didn't shed a single tear when the stupid hero was unalived. She tells him that Tauka did nothing wrong, that he was always there for her, and that a promise to the hero is worth more to her than a stupid evil brother. This cute jolly family reunion is interrupted by the maniac Diego, who busts through the wall riding his massive furry infernal general. He proves that he is just as dumb as the love of his life hidden, when he gives the snotty dude some advice and simply tells her to unalive poor old Anri because an unalived body can't disobey him. The furry general is a massive slobbering pig and can't help himself and gobbles the demon queen up, after which dumbass Tauka starts thanking Diego, not realizing that Diego's infernal captain just absorbed her, and that they now have to unalive this massive thing as well as Diego himself if they want to save pathetic little Yuna in time. While this is all happening, Marguerite and Millie are close to jail because they've practically streaked with almost all of their clothes off halfway across the world while running from these demons. So Fury, Dorothy, and Shannon decide to help out, with Fury having to get a hold of himself first as he was also in the crowd chasing unclothed Marguerite and his own daughter. In a few minutes, they have already wiped the floor with all of the demons, and they turn their focus on poor helpless Tauka, who is running around with Anri, figuring out what he is supposed to do now that he doesn't have his sword since Snotty Boy never returned it to him. Tauka talks his way into making naive snotty dude believe the pin lighting sword story, so he gives his sword back and arranges a fair and square fight on top of the ruined tower, with the emo-looking Diego and his massive furry friend, promising not to fight like a dirty bastard. Meanwhile, Ethel starts possessing more and more demons. 1 minute into their fight, Tauka reverts to being a dirty bastard and activates a pitfall trap which makes Diego, who possesses his furry-ass friend, fall through the floor. Right there, Ethel is waiting for him with a billion possessed demons, and they are all zapping him with the same lighting spell. Friedrich tries to intervene, but Sion's body comes up also possessed and kicks him halfway across the tower like the bitch he is. Tauka possesses the hero's body and goes to try to finish Diego off. He takes another shot of Soma drops because he is practically addicted and jumps into the hole, spawning a massive sword he thinks will finally defeat Diego. After landing, he realizes that the tip of his hard sword is all wrinkly and broken. Diego gets up and chops poor weak Tauka's arm off. He promptly reattaches it with some magic juju, and Diego reveals that Vertex, the furry giant, has absorption magic and that no magic attack can actually even reach his furry ass. Tauka has no idea what to do since the only things that can unalive infernal generals are sacred swords, which are magic, so they are useless as shit right now. He asks Anri if she saw how Sion defeated the generals last time, but her useless self tells him that she only met the dude after he had already unalived them. Luckily, Yuna's ass was thirsting over the hero 3 years ago, and saw that he defeated this general by splitting his sword into a billion tentacles and going all R18 on the general, so he can't predict where the attack is coming from. Tauka contacts Hawkeye wannabe Marguerite via transmitter, and instructs her to shoot the furry bastard with an arrow. She does this and he can't block since the idiot had no idea it was coming, which means that Tauka just has to surprise him to be able to penetrate his ass. I mean absorption shield. Just as Diego and his furry friend begin to get all cocky thinking that the shields will protect him, Tauka manages to get him in what dumb white-haired Diego believed to be a blind spot. But it actually isn't, because Guinness World Record holder for the smartest person alive Tauka has got Ghost Yuna to act as his second pair of eyes and tell him where Diego doesn't have a shield. However, even this isn't enough to defeat annoying-ass persistent Diego and his furry buddy, because even if the general's regeneration fails him, Diego's necro regeneration holds. Tired, Tauka finally realizes that the only way to defeat him is to destroy his zombie necro crystal, which will be hard as crap because he's gonna constantly be guarding that spot like a bitch. At the same time, Ethel is fighting Snotty Nose Boy and he is getting his disgusting snot all over the place. Back with the furry bastard, Tauka, despite being the weakest person in the entire castle, is trying his hardest to defeat Diego, even chopping his limbs off. But that doesn't help because the dude has simply turned the cheats on. He says that he lives to make humans feel what he felt in hell from the demons. Tauka straight up collapses because of all the villain bullcrap Diego is spewing, as well as the Soma drops he took. But he still manages to find a way to get the sacred sword through Diego's defenses. However, his weak ass simply doesn't have enough mana to pierce his head. With his last futile attempt to get stronger, Tauka gulps down the last of the Soma drops and just drops half dead to the ground, after which Diego almost starts crying like a bitch because the end of their fight was pretty anticlimactic. Poor heartless Anri contemplates whether she should enter his body and unalive him to try and defeat Diego on her own, but remembers that she actually does have a heart, and together with Yuna, they decide to pray that poor weakling Tauka is still alive. Anri grows a pair of nuts due to the circumstances and gets up to fight Diego to buy some time. And just at that moment, the arrogance in the room skyrockets to a zillion because Kyle is here and is ready to fight Diego and Tauka. Anri is immediately skeptical of the douche Kyle, but he quickly rizzes her into believing that he is on their side, only to immediately say something sus about fighting Tauka again. The furry demon controlled by Diego starts gulping up all the small NPC demons around him, absorbing their powers and blasting the clothes off of Kyle with a laser beam attack, leaving his sausage waddling on the wind. Yuna has started to feel the pressure and is begging poor useless Tauka to wake up and help her. While all this shit is hitting the fan, Tauka wakes up in a very blue-looking land that his dumb brain concludes is the afterlife. He immediately sees Sion is also there and is acting all stupid and naive, which just makes him even more sure that he's dead. Sion bows to poor Tauka and thanks him for saving the capital and fighting to save the rotting, disgusting zombie townspeople, even though he never asked to become the legendary hero. Tauka thinks that Sion must be rizzing his ass and starts running away as fast as possible, only to find a portal that leads to a world full of thighs. Sion tells him that this is the portal to his dream world and that he can choose to go there if he and his kinky thigh-loving ways want to. Poor wimpy Tauka still wants to save Yuna, and he gets a massive energy boost when Sion tells him that he is still alive, and that this is the world in which the sacred sword brings together legendary heroes, and that he stumbled in here by accident. Tauka practically nuts on the spot when Sion tells him that the sword got tricked into thinking that he was also a legendary hero, and that he is now chosen. Sion shows him the way out and makes him choose between his ideal juicy thigh world and the real world, and Tauka decides that his thirstiness for Yuna is more important than some random juicy thighs. Back in the real world, as the 24 hours are about to expire, helpless Yuna starts crying like a baby and praying that Tauka wakes up while promising all kinds of things when she hears a voice thinking it is coming from above. Even agrees to allow the weirdo to put her legs in stockings 1,000 times. This proves to be the king of tricksters, Tauka himself, as he leaps up from the ground all jolly. The hidden wannabe Diego is pretty happy to see his opponent, although he thinks that it is too late to save the zombie people. Tauka asks flabbergasted Anri to release his body from the coffin, and as she does it gets possessed by the strongest power to ever possess that poor old body, Sion himself. As it turns out, his soul was stuck in the sword, and now they're both ready to kick some sorry Diego ass. Kyle approaches Sion, ready to hug him with his sausage still flopping around, and Sion just dodges him like a boss, saying that he is super pissed with him. Sion leaps up into the air, dodges all of Diego's attacks like he was a prime Rock Lee, and pierces his necro crystal with no problem. At the same time, Tauka jumps up, shortens the sacred sword to a small size, and stabs the demon right in his bony little skull, making him slowly melt away. Diego tries to regenerate, but even the arrogant Kyle in his birth suit can stop him right in his dirty little tracks. Tauka goes full on hacker mode, dodging all of Diego's attacks now that he's got a weapon his useless ass is familiar with, and manages to thrust the dagger deep into the demon general's skull, and he manages to save everyone in the nick of time. Diego, being the wimp he is, manages to escape last minute, only to get eaten by the two useless little demons who are starting to rebel against his crappy ways. Everyone is super happy that Tauka finally stopped being a useless burden to everyone and grew a pair of balls and did something worthwhile. Despite all this, Yuna still doesn't want to allow his disgusting urges to prosper, and let him do sus things to her thighs. A few hours later, as the gang is having a massive party in the castle, the mayor still wants to see his share of juicy unclothed Marguerite in stockings. She tries to get Isaac to protect her, but he is also thirsting over her and chasing her along with the mayor. Yuna and Millie have a sweet reunion of useless sisters, but it is quickly interrupted when Yuna has to go shake some bitches off of Tauka. Yuna, all of a sudden, is really down bad for Tauka and even tells him that and lets him touch her thighs.
Yes! 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 Yes!
Tauka, however, being the idiot he is, blows this chance by getting pissed that the hero is also there via the sacred sword and chucks the sword out of the window, completely ruining the mood.
No! 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 Fuck! Shit!
Immediately after this, Yuna goes off to a hot spring for some post-nut thigh clarity, and talks to Marguerite, and they realize that they are both in love with Tauka. Marguerite also says that from now on, their dumbass are gonna be rivals for none other than the thigh-loving absolute creep. Anri, the cold-hearted lowly, joins the conversation and says that she is also pretty down bad for Tauka and wants to join the rivalry. Just before leaving, Sion tells everyone exactly what to do, knowing that the whole world almost went to shit in his absence when useless losers started having to be the ones to protect it. He tells Tauka to go and seal the gates of hell and that he will be able to join them in battle there, but before that, given that Tauka is still about as strong as one of those radishes, he creepily dresses up. Kyle and Dorothy need to mentor him and find the sage who will help him raise his miserable mana level. This brings us to the end of Tauka's crazy adventures as a legendary hero. Thanks for sticking around until the end, you absolute legend. Comment power of thighs down below to let us know you enjoyed it. Like, subscribe, and click on the screen to watch some of our other exciting videos. Until next time, stay awesome, stay Annie Geek.